All right, I gotta call this nonsense to order. I don't know if this is recording audio internally from my computer on this side. I'm fooling around with it, trying to see what happens. Actually, let me try something else. Hang on real quick before we get started.
You do that.
All right, I'm gonna test this and see if it works. Hang on a second. No, it's not working. Okay, stop that. Almost done fooling around with it. All right, well, since it is a test, it doesn't really matter.
Yes, we do want to find out what goes wrong.
Oh yeah, that's the whole plan. The whole plan is to figure out what we can and can't do and what has to be post-production and what can be done on the fly. So well, Mike's gone again. It's Mike's house. We can see Mike's door. Mike's leaving. Goodbye, Mike. See ya. There he comes. He's back.
And he's back. Okay, what's the over-under that he sits still for 30 seconds?
Are you ready, Mike? I can't hear you.
He's muted.
He's muted. I didn't mute him.
No, I did. You can unmute me if you're the boss of the call.
Yes, I could. But I'm not going to because I want to make sure, I want to see what we get for overlapping conversation, crosstalk, all that good stuff, because that's pretty much what we do. And if it's going to work, I want to see how it looks when we're done. So,
does this mean that you're the benevolent despot of GrokTALK?
I am. I always have been the benevolent despot of GrokTALK, at least for the last several years.
Yeah.
So let's call this beta test of Zoom GrokTALK to order. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. This is our first effort at doing this remotely. Mike is in Hollis, I am in Merrimack, and Skip is up in Guilford. And if this works, we'll be doing it on a regular basis and some kind of schedule and some sort of format, none of which has been laid out, but we're going to kind of hew to the basic principles from the previous version of the program. So a couple of topics real quick. The things that we're going to look at today in this 1 hour version is we're going to talk about a Democrat senator who faces a formal ethics complaint. We're then going to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg had cancer again and where we think that's going to go. Then tariffs are war by other means. Whole Foods CEO says plant-based fake meat is bad for your health. And why evangelicals support Trump. And then we're going to exit with Boris and Brexit. So to start out, we've covered this topic. We've had a couple posts up on it that are related to this subject. A U.S. Senator, Democrat U.S. Senator issued an amicus brief to the Supreme Court in a case out of New York. And who is it? Judicial Watch, did they file an ethics complaint, Skip?
It is, and it's against Democrat Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He was the guy who, when he wrote this, and I'm going to quote it. Well, I'll paraphrase it. He basically said, particularly on the urgent issue of gun control, the nation desperately needs to heal. And he basically was referencing SCOTUS about that New York City law that says if you are a legal gun owner, you can't transport your gun anywhere, even to outside of the city, only to ranges within the city, which are very far and few between.
Now, isn't that the one that the city of New York said they didn't want to contest it anymore and they wanted to change the law because they didn't want it to go to the Supreme Court, even though the court had already accepted it?
That's correct. And the Supreme Court said, we're going to rule on it anyways.
So they did decide? And
the Democrats are in a dither because they know once that happens, that's one of the big rungs that are left for gun control. They might as well just give up, just like they're giving up on the Russian collusion.
So what do you think? I know I've written about it. Obviously, we're talking about transportation of firearms. All your major liberal cities, a lot of your liberal states are very restrictive about where you can carry a firearm, how you can transport that firearm, how you can store that firearm. Let's say this goes to the Supreme Court. Now, the New York law was pretty restrictive. So if they overthrow that, what would you envision happening aside from a major hissy fit?
A huge hissy fit, and just this will send them up and over like Florida did with the hanging chads. It'll be that bad. Because basically it's really using the 14th to confirm the Second Amendment that says it is a right to own and bear arms. There are no restrictions on it. And people like Catherine Rogers here in New Hampshire, the state rep that was convicted of assault, who hates the idea of guns because they can be used within an assault act. States are going to be less able to put restrictions on gun owners because it's the slippery slope, but finally one in our favor. Let's put it that way.
Mike?
But here, one thing I do want to point out, even here in New Hampshire, we have transportation restrictions on firearms, not by the police, but by the Fish and Game folks who said that you cannot have a rifle even in your trunk that is loaded. And I bet you that'll go by the wayside.
It would. Mike?
I'm actually surprised the Fish and Game folks have any control outside of hunting preserves.
The last session, they did try to get rid of that law, and it failed. I just don't understand that. But
no, I don't.
Republican majorities.
So, I mean, the second versus the 10th versus the 14th gets into a very interesting territory anyway. But I think it was Steve that was onto something when he said New York put this law forward thinking they were going to score one over the gun owners. And when it got appealed to SCOTUS, they got, as you said, very worried because if it did get overturned and crammed back on them, they would be in a world of hurt. So they quickly tried to backpedal and withdraw the appeal. And so SCOTUS, you don't need to hear this because there's no case anymore. And unfortunately, they've taken it. Now, Sheldon Whitehouse saying heal, I am hearing that completely differently than it is written. I am hearing the Democrats say to the Supreme Court, heal, boy, or we're going to take you over.
Correct.
That was my impression.
Heal with two E's. You're going to come to heal or we're going to fix you.
Oh, well, they still want to heal the court by packing it. And that, I think, is something that, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, no, you do not really want to do that. And by the way, unlike the liberals who are dancing on, not Charles, but Bill Koch's death, even before he's in the grave today, since it was announced this morning that he passed away, hearing that she is now just getting past pancreatic cancer treatments, I wish her a long life, just not necessarily on the Supreme Court. I
would wish her a happy retirement anytime.
Yes.
But it was just like Ted Kennedy and the brain cancer. I wanted Ted Kennedy out of public life, not dead.
All right,
So,
well, let's move.
We are ADD bunch once again.
No, this segues right into our next item, which is Ruth Bader Ginsburg's been treated for cancer.
Oh.
And will Trump get another nominee, and what would we expect? So the formal statement from the Supreme Court reads thusly. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and this is for people who aren't familiar with this already, today completed a 3-week course of stereotactic ablative radiation therapy at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, where you can't carry guns in your car. The focused radiation treatment began on August 5th and was administered on an outpatient basis to treat a tumor on her pancreas. The abnormality was first detected after a routine blood test in early July, and a biopsy performed on July 31st at Sloan Kettering confirmed a localized malignant tumor. As part of her treatment, a bile duct stent was placed. The justice tolerated treatment well. She canceled her annual summer visit to Santa Fe, but has otherwise maintained an active schedule. The tumor was treated definitively, and there is no evidence of disease elsewhere in the body. Justice Ginsburg will continue to have periodic blood tests and scans. No further treatment is needed at this time. So this is her 4th bout with cancer. She is 86 years old. And if there was ever another Iron Lady, she is it. This is one tough woman. She just keeps coming back. I think Ginsburg, as Mike posted many, many moons ago, is a perfect example of this woman's ability to just resist everything that comes at her.
Yeah, she's determined to cling on to grim death, I think, to the bitter end, preserving that liberal majority.
I saw what you just did there. Borg back to the Klingons. Good point there, Mike.
No, I didn't actually make it deliberately that way, but as I say, Ruth is one tough old bird. Sure wouldn't be wanting to be put her in the pot for a Sunday dinner.
Right, so let's imagine something horrible happens. We don't want anything to horrible happen. Since she's not going to retire, we can almost guarantee that. Well, we can't guarantee it. She may actually get sick enough that she does, but she just continues to bounce back. So we could just assume that at some point the poor lady is just going to be overcome with something, which we do not want to happen. We like life. We respect people even when we disagree with them. So let's just say, for the fun of it, since that's what we're here for, let's say Ruth can't be on the court anymore before next summer. What do you think happens? Lots of things could happen. Obviously, there'll be a nominee, but how does the Senate respond? What do the Democrats do? What do the Republicans do?
The Democrats won't be able to do anything except scream to the press because McConnell will just shove it right through. Period.
Right. Yeah. I mean, whoever christened him Cocaine Mitch must be regretting it because he took that to heart and he's acting like a drug lord around there.
Well, I will say that I have read some stories about how there are people like Susan Collins, who is in a tough race this year for re-election, who might balk at the prospect. Somebody has brought up the notion, I think it was Senator Graham, that they might go with what they call the Garland standard, which is they would wait, if it was in the summertime, until after November, which of course Trump would push otherwise, and there'd be a lot of pushback. But that would probably become the major topic of discussion. I personally would prefer if they tried to ram it through, because honestly, the Democrats have done that in the past when they've had control of the Senate. So I think, isn't that how Sotomayor or Kagan got appointed right before midterm? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think the Republicans have the spine? Will they push it through or no?
Well, now that you've mentioned Collins, the question will be, is she going to run for re-election, even though the Democrats have been gunning for her seat ever since she had cast that vote? But is she going to screw them up by running for governor of Maine, which has been oft rumored, which would make she could vote any old way that she wants. But given her past record, she may dither on that anyways. And then you've got, you don't have Jeff Flake to whine about anymore.
Yeah, I actually think that Collins took umbrage the same way Lindsey Graham did. They turned almost into new people over this. They were so upset about what was done to Kavanaugh. I don't think they're going to let another nominee get pushed around like that. I'm just hoping she remembers what she said and did on the Senate floor over Kavanaugh. But I'm thinking Amy Coney Barrett is probably the next nominee.
That's what I think she's already been prepped.
And I think that would be a good choice.
It should be an awesome choice.
And what sort of sexual harassment charges are they going to throw at her, for God's sakes?
Well, about the same kind that they threw at Kavanaugh, which was baseless. And
I'm sure they've already done their homework, so they've got a folder somewhere, a dossier perhaps.
Binders full of women possibilities?
Binders full of women, yes. All right,
Power turns.
All right, Michael.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about tariffs as a war by other means. Explain.
I did, and Grok friend Scott McGrath has spent a lot of time talking to me about this. I used to be very much the free trader, and I thought that tariffs of any sort and this nonsense over dumping regulations, and I just thought it was all nonsense. I take the Cato approach over most things, which is that mutual free trade is good for everybody. the problems here basically come about because, first of all, it's not mutual free trade. The other guys, whether it's the Germans with their cars or the Chinese with their economy, are not practicing free trade. Secondly, there's massive theft of intellectual property, especially by the Chinese, but not exclusively. And thirdly, there's market manipulation, which is very obvious. And if you look at what China especially is trying to corner the market in, to say anything other than it's war by other means, they're practicing the art of Sun Tzu here. They are absolutely practicing war rather than diplomacy. They're just dressing it up nice because not only they make it much more difficult for our goods to enter their market than the other way around, just as the Japanese and the Koreans have too, by the way. But they also have made it that you can't trade in China unless you give away your crown jewels. And there's been rampant theft of the intellectual property of Western companies who are setting up there. They have attempted to corner our supply chain for various critical goods. I don't mind if some of my iPhones are made in China, but it would be nice if they were spread out in Singapore, Vietnam, Japan, and Taiwan as well, so China doesn't corner the market. And finally, they are trying to corner the market in other materials. And this is where what I used to think of as ridiculous dumping regulations come into play, where you are deliberately driving the price of something down so far that other sources of supply dry up. And in particular here, I mean the rare earth metals, which, as people have said, are not that rare. They're everywhere, but it takes a certain amount of effort to extract them and refine them. These metals are essentially the foundation stone for modern high-powered, small-sized magnets, which are used in gyroscopes, in all sorts of computer sensors, in efficient motors, and so on. And without these, a lot of the high tech that we and the military rely on won't work. And American sources of supply, they don't exist. They've all dried up because China has gone to the market. But you'll notice that Trump in particular is imposing heavy tariffs on these and is even promising to subsidize American production to get it off the ground. I don't particularly like subsidies, but I do like the idea of leveling the playing field on stuff that's of strategic importance. This is as bad as giving away our uranium supplies to the Russians, to be perfectly frank.
Skip?
I agree with Mike, and I've been saying this for a while. I too am a free trader. I'd rather see us have free trade, but with very few other countries do we actually have free trade. But for all of the talk of protectionism, like what was done for Harley Davidson to save its soul a few years ago against the import of the Asian rocket ships, this is different. Von Clausewitz, as he was rolling up the German city-states to form what is now Germany, said famously that politics is war by other means. And you can flip that around where warfare is politics by other means. And I think what Trump has correctly identified is that our economic might is a quality in and all of itself and can be weaponized to promote American interests. And as a businessman at the high end, he recognizes that we have a lot of ammunition within our economy and is using it against China, who he rightly sees as not just a great power, a power that is trying to use mercantilism for its own benefit and the detriment of everybody else. But I think he's using it very effectively because every time he raises a tariff, the Chinese respond. The problem, as has been pointed out many times before, is that we have a lot more goods coming from China that we can put tariffs upon than what our goods going to China can be tariffed out. And already their economy is shrinking, and it's shrinking rather quickly. Not only that, but Mike mentioned supply chains. You're seeing a lot of companies laying off in China and moving to the other Asian tigers, or pulling them back here to the United States. That with the less regulations, the lower taxes, the environment is much better here now back in the United States. And I'm even seeing some high-tech firms saying, okay, it's time to pull out of even India or other places, because the management over long distances, coupled with everything else, with the rising incomes in those countries, makes it a better deal to keep everything here in the United States. So he's actively waging war on China on a number of different fronts. And the never-Trumpers and the Democrats just decry the protectionism. And I think the American population is just starting to see this is an economic war, not just trying to protect certain industries as what has happened in the past.
Do you think?
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Thanks. Do you think, or what do you think about? You think that China and maybe anybody else is just sort of holding out hope, trying to suck it up until maybe November 2020, when perhaps if Trump doesn't get reelected, all of this goes away. But if he does, they have to then seriously consider. Do you think they can last that long? Is that their strategy?
I think there's a very good chance they're trying that. It was interesting. At first, they laughed at the idea. And then they started to realize they were dealing with effectively a mad genius. Because there were comments coming out of Chinese leadership that basically said that Trump was very smart and knew exactly what he was trying to do. And I think they started to get scared. And they're now beginning to think that, the election's getting closer, maybe they can wait him out. But the Chinese economy has always been overpumped and has been subject to small turndowns causing big ripple effects. And he knows that, and he knows it better than almost anybody except for the Chinese themselves. But if you put pressure on China's economy, especially if it's sustained by easy money and and a lot of stimulus, that at some point it's going to collapse, do them even more harm.
Skip, by the way, you have control. I do not. So if you at any point feel like there's background noise that's causing problems, you can mute people. I do not have that power, even though I set the meeting up because I set it up through your account.
I did not know that.
Just so you know, because I noticed the camera keeps flipping back to whatever room has noise.
I can become the despot again.
You can. Yes, you are. So.
I have the power, but I shall not use it. Being benevolent.
Okay. All right.
I agree with Mike on that. And one other thing that Mike didn't bring up is the massive amount of debt that China has. And while it's been often talked about here in the U.S.
Sorry.
Not my end.
No, I think it's that stupid neighbor kid, Timmy. He probably fell down the well again.
Trump knows how to manipulate the debt or use the size of their debt a lot. And that's just another weapon that he is using. And it's nice to see a president that says, America first. And I translate it in my head every time I hear that, what the Marines say. No worst enemy, no better friend. Mm-hmm. And China has proven themselves not to be our friends.
Okay, we got to move on. We need to get to our next topic, which is a quick topic because it's one of those cute personal interest stories, really. Whole Foods CEO says plant-based fake meat is bad for your health. This is pretty funny. I caught this earlier. I was going to write about it, but then I'm like, well, let's talk about it on GrokTALK. So John Mackey, or McKay, I'm not sure which, who's the co-founder and CEO of Whole Foods, recently told CNBC that while the plant-based meat is better for the environment and is more ethical than eating animals, it is made from processed ingredients that aren't healthier than actual meat. They also talked to a dietitian, and she told them that plant-based burgers are not necessarily healthier than beef burgers. They're totally fine to eat, but there's no need to replace your beef burger if you don't enjoy those. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't enjoy the fake meat because it's fake, first of all. And you know, I've tried some foods that are, you know, a little tofu-y here and there, and a few other things. And since the heart attack, I've been trying all kinds of strange things. But as a transition food, maybe I just don't see it happening. I can't imagine Americans, at the very least, without some degree of force, ever giving up their burgers.
I can tell you that those denizens of Tree Hugger have gone absolutely crazy over these, you know, meatless meats, and they very much are not in favor of them not being able to call those products meat. They think that they should. It's just not animal protein, and they don't get the whole idea of the steer wrestlers saying, no, meat, animal protein is meat, anything else is fake. But they are all about, we have to do this for the planet. We have to do this for the planet. It's sort of like electric vehicles where they say, well, it's risen, you know, 100% over the last 5 years, the number of vehicles sold. Well, yeah, and it's still 1 to 2% of the whole market. I don't think it's going to go very far, to be honest with you, because I think Americans are in love with their beef and their barbecues. And it's just the eco-socialists that are looking at this. Hey, we'll be able to get rid of all those cows that are releasing all that methane into the air. We'll just make you eat all of these legumes and call it something else.
Mike?
Yeah, well, you know, if you feed humans too much in the way of vegetables, you simply transfer the flatulence problem from the cows to the people.
It's all bean-based, by the way.
Oh, great. So we'll all be getting force-fed Beano tablets along with our bean-based protein by the government.
Yeah.
That's an excellent observation, Mike. You know, I don't think they've considered that. I'll have to include that in my article. Thank you for the tip.
Yeah. One a day plus Beano.
Yeah.
Because but that is one of the things, the unintended consequences. I mean, you could almost say you squeeze the balloon in one place and it'll pop out somewhere else. Because that's how government treats the economy. It's like Medicare and Medicaid and all this other stuff. They squeeze the medical industry in one place, and the costs pop out somewhere else.
So how many cows are there, I wonder? Because you're talking about, what, 6-7 billion people increasing their flatulence in exchange for however many cows. I don't know. There's got to be more cows than people.
Maybe.
Except in India. Well, maybe there's more cows in India than people, probably. All right. Enough of that flatulent subject. What's next on our list here? Skip found an excellent article, and it's worthy of our attention, certainly. Why evangelicals support Trump, which, of course, they really didn't in 2016.
Yeah, well, let me read you something first. And now I got to get back to my place. Oh, it's something that I've been gathering for years, which happens to be, oh yes, progressives and the proper role of government and your subservience to it. And it really is a number of sayings that Hillary Clinton has said for a number of years. And first off, she says, we just can't trust the American people to make those types of choices. Government has to make those choices for you. She also has said, famously or infamously, we need to stop worrying about the rights of the individual and start worrying about what's right for society. And now for the pièce de résistance, which is laws have to be backed up with resources and political will. And here's the kicker. And deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed. Now you contrast that with what Trump has done, which is, as you know, the article that I sent to Steve says, put him as Cyrus the Great, which is basically the Persian leader that allowed the Jews to go back to Israel and even let them rebuild the temple. He was not Jewish, did not believe in the Jewish faith, was no way at all part of the Hebrew nation, but he facilitated the rebirth of that nation.
Yeah, I think I saw the quote line that said something like, he is not of us, but he is for us. He is our leader.
And that's really the crux of that post, where nobody believes that he's as strong a Christian or evangelical as, say, Billy Graham, but yet he respects our religious beliefs. He does not want them to be transgressed. He does not want them to be put aside for the purposes of the public square. Obama historically said, you have the freedom of worship, which basically abridged the First Amendment, which says freedom of expression, which encompasses religious beliefs out in the public square. He wanted to limit it to within your synagogue or church or mosque or what have you. And we're seeing that today with all of these court battles between people who have deep-seated religious beliefs, not wishing to transgress them. And we're seeing the left trying every trick in the book to get them into court and to basically bully religious people into believing other than what they wish to believe in. The masterpiece cake controversy, where the baker did not wish to do gay marriage cakes, or the photographers, or the florists, or other artists. There's one now going to the Supreme Court where there's a militant gay organization that wanted an evangelical T-shirt printer to create shirts that espoused what the gay agenda was. And he said no, and now that's going through. And he said it's because of religious rights. The problem is that the left doesn't believe in religious rights at all. And that's one reason why evangelicals have gotten behind Trump, because he is the person who may not practice as evangelicals will, but he is protecting evangelical believers.
Just for the record, I really am not this pale. I have a screen in front of me right here, and it's making me look really, really white. I am pale. I'm very pale, by the way, but I'm trying to. This is a test, right? We're testing audio. We're testing lighting. We're testing bright.
You're like Elizabeth Warren, pale face.
I am. I'm probably more Cherokee than she is.
And I've got the same problem, because if you look at my glasses, they've got that tremendous glare. But as I move the monitor away, the glare tends to go away. But then again, I go dark.
So anyway, not to jump on your point, but that's very true. I think that's an excellent analysis of the situation. He really, think about us. We were all Ted Cruz guys. We were like, because we knew Cruz, we knew we could trust his conservative credentials. We knew nothing about Trump except that he had been a Democrat and then he had tried to run for president, and that we just didn't know he was this unknown quantity. So a lot of people still voted for him, obviously, but as we move into 2020, a lot of those people who wouldn't vote for him, people who normally vote Republican, have seen him step up for life, for religious liberty, for free speech, for good jobs, for unions, for cops, for groups that might normally vote Democrat, who are now seeing that this guy, even though everybody's calling them racists and white supremacists, bigots, that when you get down to the policies, this is their president.
True. And what we have to do as bloggers, I think, on the conservative side, who wish to uphold all of those things that we've already just mentioned in this little segment here, we have to get that word out, in that you may not like his tweets, you may not like what he says. As I've said before, it's the shiny object that he does up here, but then down here with the policies, I'm sorry, but he may even eclipse my most favorite president, who happens to be Silent Cal Coolidge at this point, in understanding that people should have the right to do what they want and not somebody else. Calvin Coolidge had the right thing about it, where he says, I'm just going to stay out of your way. And I think in his way, his own way, Trump is fulfilling part of what Reagan said, where he said, government is not the solution, it's the problem. And too often, because it is so big and because of its size, the stakes are so high, he has said and denied the Democrats the ability to pull its levers of power to get what they want, which, I'm sorry, but in a lot of cases, they would wish to rub out most of our Judeo-Christian heritage and foundation and remake us in their own image. And you put up, Steve, earlier the pronouns at NHTI in Concord, and yeah, thank you for somewhat stealing your Royal Majesty and your most excellent, your highest excellence. Although it's kind of hard to see how they would put that on a little pin, but to have us believe and accept and affirm things that we don't believe, that should be an anthem to everybody, but not to the left.
Okay, I agree. I want to try something for the rest of the segment. If you're not talking, can you mute yourself? I want to hear what the background noise is like, because I'm picking up a lot of humming here and there, and I don't know where it's coming from. Could be me, but we'll just try it. So anyway, when you're ready to talk, just unmute yourself, and we'll be able to see that right on the screen. We do have plenty of time left, so I'm going to bring up one thing that is not in our schedule, and I just saw it before we went on air. Somebody has assigned a special prosecutor in the Jussie Smollett hoax case. So this is from Hot Air, written by Ed Morrissey. It's bad news for Jussie Smollett and for Kim Foxx, the prosecutor, but good news for the people of Chicago in more ways than one. Judge Michael Tooman named former Iran-Contra investigator Dan Webb as special prosecutor to investigate the hoax and the unprecedented irregularities in the handling of the case by Chicago State Attorney Foxx. Webb says he's starting from scratch, and it won't cost Chicago a dime. Former U.S. Attorney Dan Webb has been appointed as a special prosecutor, blah, 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 blah. So, we're all very familiar with this case. We've written about it extensively, and I think most of America is aware. What do you think, special prosecutor in Chicago investigating this case?
Not too enamored of special prosecutors in general, but I think this case needs to be examined closely. The police were as mad as hell when it went down that all their work had effectively been trashed by Kim Foxx when he was given essentially a few hours community service with his buddy Jesse Jackson and then allowed to walk. And it's clear the behavior of her office was totally unethical in the process. And also the connections there, whether it was Michelle Obama's fixer reaching out to the prosecutors' offices, getting them to go easy on Jussie Smollett, whether it's Smollett's involvement with Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. There's so many intricate links in this web that it's pretty clear that it was a crime created to order for the race baiters in the Democrat Party to capitalize on. And unfortunately, it came a little too quickly unraveled for them to do that.
Skip, you shaved your beard.
You finally noticed. Yeah, it was on my bucket list. I did it. I was sort of like, not so much.
You look good, though. Anyway, so what do you want to say about this?
I think what it shows is that there are at least two levels of justice here in the United States. We have the normal type of justice for you and me, and then we have a more untouchable sense of justice for celebrities and those with political connections and or money, or all three combined. And he was able to skate with what was at the time a very small slap on the wrist of $10,000. And when you're earning $1 million a year for trying to make yourself sound like somebody that you're not as an actor, $10,000 is like you and I dropping $10 into some tip jar someplace. So he got away literally with a crime, and I'm glad to see, and it's not just because of him. I would love to see anybody who is in that higher caste of justice that is unavailable to the three of us, have it finally come back and say, Lady Justice really is blind, and she is just grabbed out with a crook to be able to haul him back in to put on her scales.
Okay. Mike has stepped away for a minute, which is fine, because we're still here. Yay!
And there's always plenty to talk about.
There is, too. And, of course, the next subject is his. So
We can start without him.
We
Go
can't
ahead.
start without him. So the next topic is Boris and Brexit. Of course, Boris, what's his last name again?
Johnson.
Yeah, okay. Recently became recently became Prime Minister in England, and he won primarily because of all the hemming and hawing and screwing around by Theresa May and the in Parliament about not following through with the Brexit vote, seemingly deliberately avoiding the obvious desires of the people of Great Britain. And now that he is the PM, he has said, we're out, we're going to make it happen, and we're going to do it as quickly as we can. And I actually thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I look at him as being able to challenge the EU and say, okay, you don't want us to leave? Here, hold my beer. Or as they say over there, hold my pint. And I think that he will try to get it done. There are several different hard issues to go through, but you know what the ace in the hole is going to be? It's my understanding, and I can't remember where I read it, but Great Britain and the U.S. have been working for a few months on a tariff-free trade agreement, which, you know, if you've got access to the American market, you probably don't need that sclerotic EU marketplace, which can't seem to get out of its own way. And, you know, you look at the stats over there, and high unemployment, stagnation of job creation, high tariffs, high taxes. I mean, they're probably better off without them. And who knows if they can get rid of the Ireland problem, maybe just by saying, we don't care anymore. The answer is, we're going to do what we want to do regardless, because we're not part of the EU anymore. And I think that's the biggest part. Stop acting like you're part of the EU, even as you are in the EU for just a little bit. If you just tell them, saw it off, up yours, and take off, I think what you're going to see is the same thing that you've been seeing all over the place since Trump took over. It's like, oh, he means it.
Mike, we started your topic without you, so please, since you're actually from England.
That's fine. I think Boris is being treated the same way that Trump was being treated. He's being treated like an idiot. They don't think he's going to amount to anything. I was just seeing a couple of articles on the UK Spectator, one of which written last week by a guy who basically said he misunderestimated Boris. He might have to change the opinion which he had so cheerfully published a week or two earlier, that Boris might actually get things done and that he might get an advantage over his unruly backbenchers and the Labour Party. And also, I'm seeing something this week that basically says that he's turning his foes to his advantage. So this is going to be really interesting, and I'm very much in favour of the hard Brexit. You will remember the various speeches of Daniel Hannan and Nigel Farage, who were witty enough in their delivery in the European Parliament over here. Plus, they've been over here anyway a few times. You may or may not know a guy called Steve Hilton, who is on Fox as the next revolution on Sunday nights, as in the next revolution will be televised. He was David Cameron's right-hand man for a long time, and he made he made note of the fact that 2/3 of the laws that get passed in the UK are effectively EU regulations that had to be enacted into British law. And that's not, and that was the kind of thing that was disturbing the ministries and Parliament, and it was especially disturbing the UK people. And I think there's a very sound case to be made to just walk away. You know, this is like negotiating with a car salesman in a bad check suit. When they don't give you what you want, you turn around and leave and make them run after you. And if the UK leaves the EU, they will have to run after the UK because the EU sells twice as much in goods to the UK as the other way around. And there's Trump out there who said, famously, not only just after Barack Obama's attempt to interfere in Brexit, basically saying you'll be sorry or you go to the back of the line, Trump immediately spoke up and said, if Britain leaves the EU and I'm president, they'll be at the front of the line for a bilateral trade agreement. And he's reiterated that, and he sent John Bolton over to reiterate that. And he's going to meet Boris at the upcoming G7 summit on those grounds. And so I think Britain will have a good share of bilateral trade agreements. And don't forget the British Commonwealth. What the EU did effectively was cut off free trade within the Commonwealth by putting the EU's free trade area around itself and destroying the preferential treatment that Britain had been giving to its Commonwealth. Some of those countries still make very, very good trading partners and will trade more with Britain when they say adieu to the EU.
So, Mike, with regard to the hard Brexit, what are I'm not familiar enough to know what the actual difficulties are, what the major barriers are. What could go sideways if Britain just says, screw you, we're out?
In my opinion, not very much. Yeah, we do have some hum or buzz somewhere. I don't think it will be coming back at us.
I'm sorry, skip your buzzing. There it goes. Yep. I don't know what it is. It could be because you have to use the mic you're using or because I didn't set this conference up right. But anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Wait a minute. Is it still buzzing again?
Yeah, every time you unmute, I hear it. It's like
Yeah, I think it's my computer fan. Let me see if I can adjust that.
Oh, okay. That could do it. Yeah, I'm lucky that my computer fan hasn't kicked in since I've been on this call.
Well, that's the whole point of this test, is to find out all the fun things that happen when we do it. So I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
So with a little more planning, either we should have a parallel dial-in bridge, which is not a bad thing, because I'd use the headset on that, or we could use, I could take a little extra time and pair the microphone, the headset with the Mac and make that work. Anyway, so what's up with a hard Brexit? Well, first of all, you've got to consider the disadvantage of simply being in the EU, the regulations, the rampant, uncontrolled immigration, which is basically an extension of Angela Merkel's welcome mat for the Muslims. Anybody that Europe can suck in can cross over into Britain at the moment. And so there's that. And then there's the costs. See, the EU was originally set up as a trading community, but a trading community of nations in Europe that had a lot of farmers. And there were farm subsidies. And when Britain got into the EU, it's paying more than it gets out of the deal, basically. And all the deals that have been structured for a orderly Brexit have had significant price tags for Britain. You've got to pay to walk away. Why have you got to pay to walk away? This isn't a lease on a BMW, for God's sakes. And besides which, I'd give you the damn BMW back. There are literally tens of billions of dollars at stake, even under an orderly exit. And I say there's plenty of trading opportunities around the world, which is why I don't think it's as bad as it sounds. So a half, first of all, an orderly exit means you don't completely exit the union. You still allow free movement of people that perhaps you don't want, instead of having a bilateral agreement over the people that you do want. You're stuck with some more regulations than you wish to deal with. You're told how your border between Northern and Southern Ireland is going to be, and much more besides. Or you can just walk away and say, you can trade with us if you want. And if you want to put a border up in Ireland and get the Irish to agree with it, good luck, but we're not going to put any controls on our side. But the other thing, has anybody noticed the value of the pound lately? It's not much more than €1 right now. When all this nonsense started, and for years beforehand, the pound had hovered around $1.6. When Brexit was first voted on, the Canadian commie governor of the Bank of England, and yes, he is. He was a former Canadian banker, Mark Carney, immediately talked down the pound and said there were going to be consequences from Brexit, and you have to lower the pound to avoid a recession and all that stuff. And it promptly dropped from 1.6 to about 1.3. And now Boris is the prime minister, and lo and behold, the pound is around $1.2. And this is all a case of scaremongering. The elites who depend on this global trade, who depend on this attachment to Europe, have said, we're going to make it hurt for you. And Boris is basically daring them.
All right.
And not only that.
We heard that before.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, Nigel Farage is standing there with the party waiting to be the next prime minister. You know, if Boris succeeds in getting a quick Brexit, hard or soft, but at least a fair one, he stays prime minister, gets re-elected. If he screws this up, Nigel Farage will campaign like you've never seen before, and he'll be the next prime minister.
That'd be okay.
Sure, it'd be okay.
Oh, from our standpoint, absolutely. From perhaps the no Brexit folks, worst nightmare.
Absolutely.
But you know, it goes back to a government is only as legitimate as those that consent to it. And Steve, you said this earlier about Theresa May screwing up the vote by a majority of the Great Britain citizens and refused to actually act on it. This goes back to it written very small a few years ago with the NHGOP, where the delegates put in a couple of planks that kind of went against people like Walt Havenstein, Scott Brown, and those folks running for re-election. So they didn't put it up officially in the platform. If you ignore those that purport to give their consent to your governance and then you screw them over, well, guess what happens? You lose. And I'm happy to say we helped in that effort.
Absolutely.
We did.
Oops.
Oh, I got an echo. Oh, it's gone. All right. All right, gentlemen, we have about 5 or 6 more minutes left. Pretty much open season. Somebody pick a topic.
I shall. Governor Sununu, the budget, Title 10, and Planned Parenthood. We had an op-ed that I put up today on GraniteGrok from Shannon McGinley of Cornerstone. And there's been some other stories I've been reading. And the gist of it is that Planned Parenthood is pulled out of Title 10 because of what's called the gag rule, that the health services part of Planned Parenthood couldn't talk about the abortion services. They found that so distasteful to their business plan and their ideology, they said, we're out of here. So now they don't get any federal money. Well, the problem is that in our budget that was vetoed, the Democrats packed it full of money for Planned Parenthood of New England, which is Planned Parenthood, New Hampshire. So if they come to a budget deal, is Governor Sununu going to allow that money to go to this abortion killing machine? And is he going to allow our tax monies to continue to fund it, even though, years ago, the Executive Council tried to kill it all off, tried not to give them a contract, but is Governor Sununu going to sign with them? Fiscally, he's been okay. There's been some good things that he's done. But it seems like every single time there's a social interest or a social issue that comes up that the left is deeply indebted to, he goes along for the ride. Is he setting himself up to be another Theresa May, Walt Havenstein, or whatever?
Well, we know that he is socially liberal. He has supported all the diversity and inclusion garbage. He has funded Planned Parenthood and only once voted not to, and that was a political vote. He then voted again to fund Planned Parenthood as an executive counselor. So I've written about it as well. I have all the faith in the world that whatever budget agreement they come to will include money for Planned Parenthood for whatever reason. It doesn't matter to him. I don't think he cares whether it's to cover Title 10 money or if it's just to hand them a bucket of cash, because I think he's pro-abortion. And I think that's what we got. And I think we knew that going in, and we didn't have a lot of choice.
But will it hurt him in the upcoming election? Because he knows that he's pinned his hopes on being a highly rated governor, which he is. But you know, when you continually stab social conservatives in the eyeballs with stuff like this, how prone are they to go, yep, I'm going to the polls and pull that lever for you? Me, not so much.
No, it only needs a small dampening of the enthusiasm to tip the balance the other way, unless you get a massive Trump wave that carries him along. And
there's another question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's sad because he's vetoed a lot of the nonsense the Democrats have put up, not all of it, and actually made the almost troll-like comment, if they don't want me to veto them, they should stop sending me stupid bills, which I thought was terrific. And, you know, and he stood firm on the Second Amendment and a few other things. Mostly the guy's doing the right thing. But I don't think you're going to shake him free of Planned Parenthood, and I think that's a terrific shame. But go ahead.
I don't know. I think he's the Republicans' John Lynch. I think he can get reelected as long as he runs, because it is a highly, 30%, almost 40% of our state is undeclared. Granted, a lot of those guys are folks like you who are not Republican, who are Republicans but aren't registered as Republicans. So those people, I don't think, with a few exceptions, yourself included, Skip, might take this personally and say, listen, this is an issue that I can't get past, and I'm not going to vote for you. I will risk the nightmare of a Democrat governor. But I think most people understand that that comes with a massive fiscal punch to the face. And if they think about it long enough, they'll probably suck it up and vote for him. I don't think he has to worry. The people who are going to run against him are probably going to run as hard left as the Democrats who are running for president. And when push comes to shove, New Hampshire's not that purple.
Like little Andrew?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right, we got about 60 to 90 seconds left. We're going to pull this sucker down and take a look at the audio and the video and see what happened and how it turned out, and whether, what we need to tweak and what we need to do. Obviously, I need to do something with my lighting.
And I need to do something about the glare.
I need to, and then we'll make sure we can phone in, and you'll have headsets, and the sound quality will probably improve dramatically. But again, it's a test, it's a beta. That's what we're here for. I wanted to have a Grok banner behind me, but I didn't have the time because I walked my dogs and I came back and I didn't have time to put it up.
But, and I forgot to take it out of the truck as well.
Exactly. Mine's in my trunk. So Mike has some beautiful hardwood paneling behind him and some glass. Your lighting looks better, Mike, than ours. Let me just tell you right now, you look good. Okay.
I'm looking at my image. I'm thinking I'm a little bit on the dark side. I actually flipped my iPhone backwards from a mount just behind the PC, so that the iPhone's flashlight is on. That was a quick lighting fix.
All right. Well, Skip, if you will call the meeting, please, since you have supreme command control, and then I will go in and pull the audio down and see what we got. You're muted, Skip.
I know. I'm looking for the unmute button now that I switched from full screen back to regular screen.
Okay.
And now let's see.
Hey, thanks for checking out GrokTALK beta Zoom version. We're going to try it again soon.
Very good. And gosh, how do I stop? I want to keep the recording. New screen name. No, I don't want a new screen name.
It should keep the recording. Just leave the meeting. Leave the meeting. Leave the meeting.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, folks.